The stale air hung thick with cheap beer and bad decisions, a heavy, oppressive smell that clung to everything: the fake wood paneling, the sticky floor, the worn vinyl seats. Sergeant First Class Anya Petrova, a name that meant nothing in this civilian dive bar, was off duty, or rather acting off duty, blending in a deliberately plain dress, a muted gray that absorbed the neon glare. Her face scrubbed free of the usual sharp edges, the disciplined severity replaced by a carefully cultivated look of weary anonymity. She was watching Lieutenant Colonel Alistair Thorne, 2 stools down, a figure of excessive self-importance. Thorne, a Marine celebrated for his combat tours, but recently under deep investigation for black market weapons sales, was drunk, comfortably, loudly oblivious to the professional scrutiny. He was under his tie, was loosened, his expensive watch flashing under the dim lights. He was talking into his phone, occasionally laughing too heartily, a sound that grated on Yai's nerves. She had been in position for 3 hours, observing every sip, every movement, every nervous glance. He cast toward the door. She knew the exchange was imminent. His contact, a known arms broker named Vulture, was due any second. The moment of transfer, the moment of evidence gathering, was close enough to taste the metallic tang of adrenaline in her own. Muthanya kept her breathing, even her heart rate regulated, a machine of quiet observation. Her senses were hyper-alert, noting the bartender wiping down glasses, the couple in the corner arguing softly, the rhythmic thump of a terrible 80s power ballad. Everything was a data point. Everything fed into her tactical assessment. Thorne was her target. The Vulture was the evidence. She was the invisible wire, the silent observer. Then a different distraction emerged. One not on the mission profile, a sound of stumbling and a muttered curse. A young Marine Corporal Jensen stumbled hard against her stool, jolting her slightly. He was younger than Thorne, certainly less polished, maybe 21, a little too much hair gel, a little too much alcohol, a cheap domestic beer sloshing over the lip of his bottle, splashing across her civilian blouse. Anya froze, a momentary lapse in control, a flash of professional irritation that this minor inconvenience might compromise her operation. Jensen, immediately defensive, seeing a woman he perceived as weak, snapped a vulgar apology, then grabbed her arm too tightly, his grip instantly possessive, telling her to watch where she was going. His breath smelled sharply of cheap whiskey and regret. Anya's training, flared instinct took over. She could feel the weight of Thorne's attention shift from his phone to the scuffle. A slight turn of his head, a momentary flicker of interest in the predictable barroom drama. She had to shut this down without attracting real notice, without turning a minor incident into a situation that would require the deployment of her true skills. Zin's grip tightened on her arm, his fingers digging in pain. Was a distant, abstract sensation, a flicker beneath her focus. He repeated his aggressive demand. "Watch your surroundings, bitch," he snarled, the contempt clear in his voice. He wanted a confrontation, a release for whatever internal pressures he was wrestling with. He was choosing her because she was quiet, because she seemed manageable, because she was alone. Anya knew she could neutralize him in a second. A single pressure point, strike a wrist, lock, a quiet incapacitation, but she could not do that. Not in front of Thorne, not now. Not when the Vulture was about to walk through the door. Jensen pushed her roughly. She was too slow to react perfectly, playing the part of the startled civilian. Her foot momentarily caught on the brass rail of the bar. Thorne watched, curious, waiting to see how this civilian handled the situation. His eyes narrowed, a predatory grin starting to form. He liked the chaos. He liked watching people struggle. He found a perverse entertainment in the suffering of others. Jensen swung a sloppy fist, a drunken arc of frustration connecting squarely with Anya's jaw. A sickening thud echoed in the sudden hush of the bar. The pain was immediate, blinding. A white flash behind her eyes. She tasted blood, metallic and sharp. She stumbled back, involuntarily knocking a chair over. The noise silenced the bar, every head turning, every conversation halting. Thorne was standing now, fully engaged, his grin wider, a terrible Cruel pleasure in his expression, he enjoyed the sight of her stumbling. Jensen squared up again, fueled by adrenaline and alcohol, ready to hit her a second time to finish the job. Anya knew this was her only chance to turn the mess into an asset. She had to make Thorne believe she was exactly what she seemed, a helpless civilian now transformed into an ordinary woman seeking desperate, unpolished revenge. She had to commit to the performance, let the violence flow, but channel it precisely. Enough to make Thorne think she was simply a woman with a dangerous temper, not an operative. With a deadly skill set, she needed to move from being an observation point to becoming a necessary distraction, a shield for the vulture's inevitable entrance or an unexpected element of surprise that would expose Thorne's true reaction. Her body thrummed with the anticipation of the next move. The pain in her jaw irrelevant. The mission was everything. The performance had begun, and she had to play the angry victim perfectly, but with lethal undertones of capability. Tanya's eyes went cold, the civilian persona vanishing in that instant, the pain in her jaw fueling a focused clarity. Jensen lunged again, mistaking her momentary stumble for weakness, but she was already moving faster than his drunken senses could process. Her foot shot out, hooking his ankle with surgical precision. The sudden displacement sent his weight shifting forward simultaneously. Her free hand, a compressed spring of muscle and bone, drove a calculated strike deep into his diaphragm. A silent gasp, a ragged, pitiful sound escaped him as the air forcibly emptied from his lungs. Jensen didn't scream. He couldn't scream. He simply buckled the adrenaline, instantly replaced by shock and agonizing inability to breathe. The whole bar watched frozen in a tableau of stunned disbelief. Thorne watched closest of all, his former amusement replaced by a clinical curiosity that was not the move of a random civilian. That was the application of specialized force designed to disable, not just injure. Jensen dropped the Marine, hitting the floor. A gasping, shuddering heap. He tried desperately to rise, to crawl, to find air, but Anya was already towering over him, relentless, unforgiving. She stepped onto his chest, momentarily pinning him. Her hand a blur of motion, a technique perfected in countless hostile training scenarios. She grabbed his arm and snapped his elbow backward with a sickening, dry crunch. The sound was loud, sharp, final, echoing in the sudden, cavernous silence. The whole bar recoiled, a collective, involuntary flinch. Thorne's predatory smile evaporated, replaced by a look of dawning comprehension and primal fear. That was not a bar fight. That was the work of a professional dismantler, a combat specialist, a predator. Anya didn't waste a glance on Jensen. She locked eyes directly with Thorne across the room. The distance felt enormous, yet the connection was absolute. The silence between them was thick with implication. Thorne recognized the terrifying efficiency of the execution, the speed, the inhuman precision, the utter lack of emotional involvement, and the act of breaking a man that was a soldier's move as special operators. Work. Thorne swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, realizing this was not a random brawl. This was targeted action. He frantically scanned the shadows behind her for backup, for a hidden camera for the team he knew must be close, but Anya was focused only on him, holding his gaze, burning the message into his mind. She stood up slowly, deliberately taking her time, stepping over the unconscious Marine. She smoothed her gray civilian blouse. A gesture of unsettling calm. She brushed imaginary dust from her skirt. The move was deliberate, a performance of power, a final flourish of control. She reached into her purse, pulling out not a weapon, not a phone, but a small silver challenge coin, the distinct insignia of the Special Operations Unit Thorne knew was tracking him. She tossed it underhand, a perfect low arc. It slid across the sticky wooden floor, stopping directly at the polished toe of Thorne's expensive boot. The metal gleamed under the neon light. Anya spoke 4 unpunctuated words, her voice low, dangerous, carrying easily across the short distance. The deal is off. Thorne. She turned and walked out of the silent bar, her head high. Her pace measured the blare of an approaching ambulance, already audible outside Jensen's Cries muffled by the closing door, Thorne stood paralyzed, the coin gleaming under the light. He had missed his contact. He had revealed his fear. He had underestimated the quiet woman at the bar, and his inevitable capture was now merely a matter of time and paperwork.